Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be diving into Moby Dick by Herman Melville.
Oh, one of my favorites.
I know you're a big fan. So
I am.
we've got some excerpts from the book itself, and then some of your own notes and research that you've done.
Right, yeah.
You're clearly fascinated by 19th century whaling, so
I am.
get ready, folks, to explore a world of adventure, obsession, and let's be honest,
Totally.
some seriously intense whale hunting.
Yeah, it's incredible how Melville just kind of throws us right into the thick of it right from the beginning.
Right away.
You can practically smell the salt spray.
Mm-hmm.
Feel that deck swaying beneath your feet.
Yeah, and he doesn't sugarcoat the danger either.
No, not at all.
Like right off the bat.
Right.
He even quotes this saying,
Oh.
few ever return in the ships on board of which they departed.
Oof.
Not exactly a reassuring job advert.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, the fear of drowning or being lost at sea.
Right.
I mean, the source material really emphasizes the sheer physicality of it all.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine like trying to control a harpooned whale.
Right.
This creature that's basically a powerful, unbroken colt attached to a rope.
Right.
I mean, Melville really makes you feel the rawness of it all,
Yeah.
Not just the thrill of the chase, but the blood, the muscle,
Yeah.
the sheer effort of turning a creature as magnificent as a whale into something as mundane as oil.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It is.
I can't even imagine the kind of grit and determination those whalers needed.
Right.
But speaking of determination,
Okay.
we also get to meet Ishmael, our narrator.
Yes.
He's got this yearning for adventure, this desire to escape the city and find something more, and that resonates with me for sure.
It's a universal longing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And need to break free from the ordinary.
Uh-huh.
And Ishmael doesn't just want to be a passive observer.
Yeah.
He chooses to be a common sailor, rejecting these so-called honorable, respectable toils of a higher position on the boat.
He's not afraid to get his hands dirty.
No, he is not.
Even if he arrives in New Bedford practically broke.
Yeah.
And what a setting Melville creates with New Bedford. It's like this gloomy, imposing character itself.
It is.
Full of shadows and secrets.
Right. And it really sets the stage for both the external journey on the high seas, but also, Ishmael's internal journey of self-discovery.
Oh, for sure.
And then there's the Spouter Inn.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the name alone sounds like a warning.
It does, doesn't it?
Like you were about to enter some shady establishment.
Yeah, with the gallows outside and the
Yeah.
pots filled with boiling blubber.
It's like some strange nautical nightmare.
Total.
But it's in that nightmare that Ishmael meets Queequeg.
Right.
And honestly, could you imagine a more unlikely roommate?
Oh my God.
I mean, Queequeg is this tattooed harpooner who travels with a shrunken head.
A shrunken head.
Talk about culture shock.
Seriously, finding yourself sharing a cramped bunk with someone who embodies everything your culture tells you to fear.
Yeah.
And yet that shrunken head becomes a symbol of how quickly those feels can melt away in the face of genuine connection.
It's true.
They end up becoming bosom friends willing to die for each other.
I love that.
It's wild.
And it really highlights, the power of understanding across cultures.
Yeah.
Because Queequeg, with his, heathenish ways,
Yes.
worshiping this little idol,
Right.
challenges all of Ishmael's preconceived notions.
Yeah. Totally. And it makes you wonder, what are the shrunken heads in our own lives?
Well, that's good.
What are we afraid of that might actually turn out to be a source of connection?
That is the question.
Right. And all of this is happening as these young, inexperienced guys are flooding into New Bedford, desperate to join whaling crews. Melville is showing us these landlubbers suddenly trying to act like seasoned sailors, all awkward and out of place in their mismatched clothes.
It's funny. There's something both humorous and tragic about that, I think.
I agree.
It speaks volumes about the allure of whaling at the time,
Yeah.
These were young men looking for adventure fortune, or maybe just an escape from their everyday lives.
Totally.
They were willing to risk everything, even if they had no idea what they were getting into.
And speaking of leaps of faith,
Okay.
Ishmael and Queequeg find themselves on the Pequod, captained by the one and only Captain Ahab.
Here he is. And let me tell you, this guy is intense.
Intense. Ahab is the definition of obsession.
Yeah.
This brooding figure with an ivory leg.
Right.
This constant reminder of his encounter with Moby Dick the white whale.
Yes.
It's Melville is introducing a force of nature in human form.
Right. And from the moment Ahab steps on deck, there's this feeling of impending doom.
Yeah.
Like the whole voyage is on a collision course with fate.
It makes you wonder, is Ahab heroic or foolish in his quest for revenge?
Right? And what about the rest of the crew? They're stuck on this ship.
Yeah.
With a captain who's clearly consumed by his vendetta.
The book hints at this really rigid hierarchy on board.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with everyone from the first mate Starbuck to the lower-ranking sailors like Stubb and Flask, all trying to navigate Ahab's unpredictable moods.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
The dynamics there.
Oh, yeah.
Starbuck, for instance, represents a voice of reason.
Yeah.
He's deeply religious and sees the danger in Ahab's obsession.
Right.
But he's also bound by duty.
Yeah.
It's like the ship itself is a microcosm of society.
Oh, interesting.
With all its tensions and power struggle.
I like that.
But then you also get these little glimpses into life on board, you know?
Yeah.
Like that anecdote about Stubb dreaming of being kicked by Ahab's ivory leg.
Oh, right.
Like this dark humor is the only way to cope with this constant tension and danger.
Totally.
You're right. Humor, superstition, camaraderie.
Yeah.
Melville shows how those things become coping mechanisms for the crew.
Yeah.
But overshadowing everything is the looming presence of Moby Dick.
Of course.
He's more than just a whale.
Right.
He's become this almost mythical figure.
He's this ghostly white whale.
Right.
Capable of surviving attacks that would cripple any other whale.
Exactly.
You get why he inspires both fear and awe in the whaling community?
I do.
And of course, that just feeds Ahab's obsession even more.
Of course.
Right. Moby Dick represents something primal and untamable. The embodiment of the vastness and power of the natural world that Ahab is desperately trying to conquer.
But is it even possible to conquer something like that?
That's the question, isn't it? And as we'll see, the hunt for Moby Dick is as perilous and unpredictable as the whale itself.
Exactly. It's a journey into the heart of obsession and the depths of human nature. And that, I think, is a perfect place to kind of pause and reflect on what we've uncovered so far. What's standing out to you about this world of whaling and Ahab's pursuit of Moby Dick?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm curious.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and dive even deeper. Okay, so we've talked about the brutal reality of whaling and Ahab's intense obsession with Moby Dick. But it's clear that this white whale is more than just an animal to Ahab.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. There's a whole other layer of meaning there.
For Ahab, Moby Dick represents everything that's wrong with the world. You know, all his pain and rage, his sense of loss. But I think Moby Dick embodies something even bigger than that.
Okay.
Those forces of fate and the universe that are completely beyond our control.
I see what you mean.
You know?
It's like that line from Moby Dick where Melville says, though in many of its aspects, this visible world seems formed in love, the invisible spheres were formed in fright.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's like there's this hidden darker side to existence that we only get glimpses of.
Exactly. And the white whale embodies that unknown, the unknowable. He's both terrifying and awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
Because he represents that vastness and indifference of the universe. You know?
It makes you feel pretty small.
It really does.
And the way Melville describes Moby Dick's whiteness adds to that feeling. He's not just white. He's like supernaturally white, almost glowing.
Yeah.
At one point, he's even compared to a snow-white cross against the sky.
That's right.
It's both beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
Melville's use of color is really interesting because white is usually associated with purity and innocence.
Right.
But it can also represent emptiness, death, the void.
Right.
And in Moby Dick, it seems to be all of those things at once.
Yeah.
He's alluring and deadly, a force of nature that you can't look away from.
And it's funny how Melville talks about white inspiring both awe and terror in people, like how we associate the pallor of death with the afterlife. He even says, nor in some things does the common hereditary experience of all mankind fail to bear witness to the supernaturalism of this hue.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But even before they encounter Moby Dick, the crew faces all sorts of dangers and challenges.
Of course.
Remember that other whaling ship? The one with the prophet Gabriel on board?
Oh, yeah.
He's convinced that the Pequod is doomed.
That whole episode with Gabriel was so unsettling.
It was.
I mean, sailors are already a superstitious bunch.
Totally.
And then this guy shows up shouting about how Ahab is leading them to hell.
Right.
It's hard not to see that as a bad omen.
Yeah, especially with how Gabriel warns Ahab to beware of the horrible tale.
Right. It's like...
Yeah, Melville's a master of foreshadowing.
He is.
He's constantly dropping these hints and omens that point towards the tragic end.
Yeah.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
And speaking of foreshadowing, what about that chilling scene with the life buoy?
Oh, yeah.
Pequod encounters the Delight,
Right.
a ship that's lost several men in its own pursuit of Moby Dick.
Mm-hmm.
And as they sail away, the crew of the Delight sees the Pequod's life buoy hanging at the stern and shouts, "In vain, O ye strangers, ye fly our sad burial, ye but turn us your taffrail to show us your coffin."
Wow.
I get shivers down my spine just thinking about it.
It's a stark reminder that no one escapes fate.
Yeah.
Especially not on a voyage like this.
For sure.
Even something meant for rescue, like a life buoy, becomes a symbol of death.
Yeah, it's interesting how Melville uses these everyday objects and turns them into something much more symbolic.
He does.
But setting aside those ominous signs for a moment, I'm curious about the whaling itself.
Yeah.
It's such a complex and brutal process.
It is.
And Melville doesn't shy away from the gruesome details.
No, he does not.
It's almost hard to believe that people actually did this for a living.
I know.
But Melville describes it all so meticulously. From spotting a whale to the final carving up of the carcass. You know, he talks about using these drogue bundles to tire out the whales.
Yeah.
How they were attached to the harpoons and dragged the whales down until they were exhausted.
Right, yeah.
It's this fascinating mix of ingenuity, folklore, and sheer brutality.
Absolutely. It's a testament to how resourceful the whalers were.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the ruthlessness of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
These people were willing to do whatever it took to get that precious oil.
Right.
It makes you question how we justify exploiting the natural world for profit.
That's a good point.
And yet at the same time, Melville will throw in these moments of humor and satire.
He does.
Especially when he's talking about the cetological classifications of whales.
Right.
Basically, the study of whales.
Yeah.
But Melville uses it to kind of poke fun at how little the so-called experts really knew.
Right.
He mentions all these misidentified species and their obsession with the sperm whale's head and its valuable spermaceti oil.
Yeah, like he's saying, even with all their fancy labels, humans are still clueless about these magnificent creatures.
Right.
It's that blend of humor and horror that makes Melville such a brilliant writer.
I agree.
And it's not just the whaling itself.
Right.
He also makes the anatomy of the whale fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine having your eyes on the sides of your head like that?
That's so strange.
Right. Melville explains how the whale's eyes are positioned so they can't see directly in front of them.
Oh, wow.
He compares it to a human trying to see with their ears.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's such a vivid image.
It is.
And it makes you realize just how different their perception of the world must be.
Totally.
And then there's the sperm whale's head.
Oh, yeah?
Melville calls it the Great Heidelberg Ton because it contains this huge amount of spermaceti oil.
Right.
But he also points out that it's a source of mystery and wonder. He describes it as being pleated with riddles and dumbly lowering with the doom of boats and ships and men. It's almost like the whale's head represents the vastness and power of nature itself.
Yeah.
Something that humans can't fully comprehend, let alone conquer.
And it all comes back to that theme of man versus nature.
It does. And that struggle becomes even more literal when Ahab gets his new leg forged from a piece of whalebone.
No, that's right.
It's like he's trying to replace a part of himself with a symbol of his dominance over the whale.
That scene with the blacksmith is so powerful.
It is.
And the blacksmith even warns Ahab that the whalebone leg will break bones.
Oh, wow.
It makes you wonder, you know,
right.
if Ahab's new leg is a symbol of his strength or ultimately a sign of his own vulnerability.
Interesting.
Like he's trying to define nature.
Yeah.
But nature always has the last word.
It definitely feels like his obsession is driving him towards self-destruction.
Yeah.
But even as the crew gets closer to that final confrontation with Moby Dick, Melville throws in all these side stories and digressions.
He does.
We learn about the bizarre legal battles over whale ownership, the intricate process of stripping the blubber, and those strange rituals and traditions of life on a whaling ship.
Right. It's like he's saying, you know, life goes on, even in the face of this epic quest.
And then there are those moments of pure Melville brilliance.
Oh, yeah.
Like when Stubb tries to send the cook down to reason with the sharks.
I love that.
Who are making too much noise while they're flensing the whale.
Classic Melville. He's a master of using humor and satire to explore the absurdity of human behavior, even in the face of death and danger.
But one of the things that really struck me is how he delves into the lives of each crew member.
He does.
We learn about their backgrounds, their hopes, their fears. They become more than just nameless sailors on a doomed ship.
Right. Each character represents a different aspect of humanity.
I like that.
You know, there's Starbuck wrestling with his conscience, Queequeg with his unwavering loyalty, and then there's Pip, the young cabin boy.
Oh, Pip!
He falls overboard during the chase and spends his terrifying night alone in the open ocean.
Oh, God.
It's a truly transformative experience.
It is.
That strips him of his sanity, but somehow brings him closer to a primal understanding of the universe.
It's like Pip sees something out there in the darkness that the rest of the crew can't or won't acknowledge.
Right.
It's both heartbreaking and profound.
Pip's story highlights just how small and insignificant we are in the face of the vastness of nature.
Yeah, and that brings us to the heart of Moby Dick.
It does.
You know, it's not just a story about whales and whaling.
It's not.
It's about the human condition.
Yes.
About obsession, revenge, or our struggle against fate, and our search for meaning in a world that can often feel chaotic and indifferent. And with that, we find ourselves on the brink of that final confrontation with Moby Dick.
Here we go.
The tension is palpable. So we left off with the Pequod closing in on Moby Dick, that sense of impending doom hanging heavy in the air. It's like everything we've learned about Ahab and the white whale is about to collide.
The final chapters of Moby Dick are like a symphony building to its crescendo. Melville's writing becomes so intense, so visceral. You're swept up in the current of Ahab's obsession.
Totally, and it's not just the weather. Ahab's pushing the crew to their limits, ignoring all signs of danger. Like the compass needle spinning wildly during that typhoon.
That's right.
He's completely lost in his pursuit of Moby Dick.
He sees the storm as just another obstacle to overcome, a test of his will. Remember when he's told the anchors are working and to get them inboard? He just shouts, "Strike nothing and stir nothing, but lash everything."
Oh, wow.
It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time.
He's like a man possessed. But what strikes me is how differently Starbuck reacts. You know, he's been wrestling with his conscience the whole time, seeing the danger in Ahab's obsession, but he's also bound by duty and loyalty to his captain. I can't imagine the turmoil he must be feeling.
Starbuck represents that voice of reason, the moral compass of the ship. But ultimately, he's powerless against Ahab's monomania. And then there's that encounter with the Rachel, the other whaling ship desperately searching for its lost crew, including the captain's young son.
That scene just broke my heart.
It is heartbreaking.
They plead with Ahab to help, but he's so fixated on Moby Dick that he refuses to even slow down. It shows how completely his humanity has been eroded by his obsession. He's willing to sacrifice everything and everyone to achieve his goal.
It's a powerful reminder that vengeance often comes at a terrible cost.
It does.
Ahab can't see past his own pain to recognize the suffering of others.
And that encounter, of course, foreshadows the Pequod's own tragic end.
It does.
Like Melville is setting us up for the inevitable. But before that final showdown, there's this almost surreal moment of calm during the 3 days of the chase. The ocean becomes this glassy, eerie expanse. Even the sharks and birds seem to vanish.
The calm before the storm, literally. Melville creates this incredible tension.
He does.
This sense of anticipation that's almost unbearable. And then finally, the confrontation with Moby Dick just explodes onto the page.
It's pure chaos, pure adrenaline.
It is.
Melville's descriptions are so vivid. You're right there on deck with Ahab. Feeling the spray of the ocean, the splintering of wood, the raw power of the whale.
You see the whale breaching the boats, being smashed to pieces? Ahab lashed to Moby Dick by the harpoon line, screaming, "To the last I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee."
Oh my gosh.
It's both terrifying and magnificent.
It is.
A testament to Ahab's indomitable spirit. but also to his utter madness.
In the end, the whale wins, doesn't it?
He does.
The Pequod is pulled down into the depths, creating this vast whirlpool that sucks everything down with it.
Right.
Leaving nothing but ripples on the surface.
That final image of the Pequod sinking is both beautiful and horrifying.
Yeah.
The white whale, unscathed, swims away, while the ship and its crew are swallowed by the sea.
Right.
It's the ultimate triumph of nature over human ambition.
Yeah.
A reminder that some forces are simply beyond our control.
So what do we make of Ahab?
Yeah.
Is he a hero or a villain?
Right.
A victim of fate or the architect of his own destruction?
That's the brilliance of Moby Dick.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
Right.
Ahab is both heroic and flawed, driven by a thirst for revenge that ultimately consumes him. Melville doesn't judge him. He simply presents him to us in all his complexity,
Right.
and leaves us to draw our own conclusions.
I think that's what makes Moby Dick such a powerful and enduring story. It's a story about obsession, the limits of human ambition, the destructive nature of vengeance, and the awe-inspiring power of the natural world.
Yes.
But it's also a story about our own human nature. The darkness and the light that reside within each of us.
Exactly. It challenges us to look within ourselves and ask, what are our own white whales?
Right.
What drives us? What consumes us? And are we willing to face the consequences of our obsessions?
Those are questions worth pondering.
They are.
And as you think about them, imagine yourself on the deck of the Pequod, the salt spray on your face, the vast expanse of the ocean stretching out before you.
Yeah.
What do you feel? Awe? Fear? Or perhaps a bit of both?
What would your story be?
Yeah.
Moby Dick offers a powerful reminder that the choices we make, the paths we choose, have consequences that ripple outwards, affecting not just ourselves, but those around us.
Right.
It's a call to action, to live with intention, awareness, and a deep respect for the forces that shape our lives.
Right. Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Moby Dick.
My pleasure.
We hope it's inspired you to explore this epic tale for yourself.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.